Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Building a Framework for Project Reporting. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's webinar is designed specifically for individuals who are responsible for submitting AmeriCorps VISTA reports. But regardless of your role within your VISTA project, we're glad to have you with us today. My name is Eric Powell, and I'm a training specialist with the VISTA program at AmeriCorps headquarters in Washington, D.C. I did proudly serve as an AmeriCorps VISTA member in 2006 with Rhode Island Campus Compact, and then as an AmeriCorps VISTA leader in 2008 with Illinois Campus Compact. And during our time together in today's presentation, I'll be your host as well as one of the presenters. I'm thrilled today to be joined by our guest speaker, Willie Heineke, who is a National Service Program Manager with Housing Action Illinois. As a three-term AmeriCorps VISTA alum, Willie not only brings his lived experience in national service and social justice to his role at Housing Action, but he also leads a team and a staff of AmeriCorps leaders to manage and expand the now nationwide AmeriCorps VISTA program that they call the Housing Action AmeriCorps Network. Willie, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Eric. It's great to join for this particular topic. Planning effectively and in advance for the various reports anyone has to submit to AmeriCorps is an important practice. I'm excited to discuss how anyone can use their role as a sponsor to establish and maintain data collection and project reporting strategies that won't have them sweating when the deadlines arrive.
It's great to avoid that frustration and stress. So hopefully we'll be able to alleviate that today, especially because during our time together today, we're going to cover three important points about project reporting. First, Willie and I are going to identify the benefits of reporting to the sponsoring organization as well as to AmeriCorps. Then we'll highlight the required AmeriCorps reports that every VISTA project has to submit. And we'll wrap things up with a discussion about how to successfully plan for reporting across various stages of your project. At the end of today's session, we'll answer as many questions as we can. We do have a lot of important and helpful information to cover, so let's go ahead and begin. It should now come as no surprise that AmeriCorps requires certain reports during the life cycle of your VISTA project. But before we get to those reports or tips for successfully planning for reporting, let's discuss the reasons behind this requirement. That is, let's clarify the benefits to reporting. We naturally collect data. All of us each day are gathering facts about things like the weather, traffic, which I know no one likes, needs for our week ahead, and so much more just in our personal lives. Our professional work is also ripe for data analysis and collection, whether we do it formally or informally, or using a specific method or a more randomized approach. In fact, it's likely that in your journey to becoming a VISTA sponsor, you probably had to gather and receive data based on the work your organization was already doing, because we're not collecting project data simply for data's sake. So you ask, why are we doing this in the beginning? Well, let me turn it over to Willie so that we can learn more about the why of this work.
Collecting and sharing data about your projects offers several benefits to your organization and to AmeriCorps. The four primary benefits we will highlight do not represent an exhaustive list. Indeed, you may have determined others, but they represent important points. The first three we will cover sustainability, tracking progress, and informing strategy are a bit more technical and relate to why AmeriCorps completes project reporting. The final benefit, storytelling, is a favorite because it allows not just AmeriCorps, but also you a way to compellingly share the accomplishments of your projects. The first benefit of reporting is its ability to help with project sustainability. AmeriCorps wants projects to be successful, so an overall goal at the end of the project's life cycle's first year is to establish methods that will set your project up for success in the following years. Reporting on project requirements and accomplishments assists with developing sustainability in your project. Reporting is one way AmeriCorps monitors VISTA projects and tracks their progress through implementation, accomplishments, or compliance. As a federal agency, AmeriCorps has an obligation to ensure that taxpayer money is used properly and efficiently. Your AmeriCorps regional office will follow your project's quality and compliance from its early stages through its conclusion. They will regularly assess how well the project is meeting specific goals and objectives outlined in the project application, complying with program and fiscal requirements, and whether any technical assistance is needed. Because VISTA headquarters prepares compliance reports for Congress, the White House, and the public, sponsors and supervisors can plan to regularly engage in tracking project progress or monitoring and oversight to assess how well the project is being implemented and whether the project is on track to achieve its goals. Something I say to my subsite staff and AmeriCorps members regarding reporting is, imagine as if you are writing this report as if it's being read aloud on the floor of Congress as they debate whether or not your specific position and programming is worth continued funding. Because if you do reporting right, your reports may be cited like that. In addition to tracking the concrete, like compliance or accomplishments, another great reason to gather project data is because it helps to illuminate the unknown. A moment ago, we mentioned that your AmeriCorps regional office monitors projects in part to determine what technical assistance they might need, if at all. This idea of evaluating a project to ask such questions is very much so the spirit of informing project strategy. The revealing nature of data not only identifies gaps, but it also allows for questions and ideas to come to light that could profoundly impact your project or organization. Such revelations can come from questions like, do support grant funds correlate with higher levels of VISTA member satisfaction and attrition? And are my VISTA member recruitment efforts focused where the need is greatest? The last benefit we'll discuss is a personal favorite of mine because of the power it offers not just AmeriCorps, but you, the project sponsors, in communicating clearly and powerfully the impact of your work. How best to have community members hear about the impact of your work, applicants learn about what VISTA members do, and board members and constituents go on to share how people's lives have changed. You are probably no stranger to understanding how compelling a story can be in such circumstances. Project data will give you the confidence to tell these stories with concrete, reliable information. What I like to say about stories, which is something based off something I heard from one of my favorite storytellers, Brennan Lee Mulligan, is we're all just stories telling each other stories while we make the story. Eric, let's pass it back to you for an activity.
Willie, before I get to the activity, I just want to say I love that quote, partially because I love storytelling, and their storytelling has so many ways that are connected to reporting. Because when you're reporting, you're literally telling your project story. So I wish we had more time to go into that, but I'm going to save that quote definitely for my own records. At the moment, though, we do want to take a little more time to learn from you, specifically about how you most commonly use the project data that you collect. Before we launch the poll, I want you to quickly think about two things so that you are answering this question correctly. One, although you may use data in many ways, we're specifically looking for the one way that you most commonly use your project data, so you can only answer once. Second, the poll is specifically asking how you use the data you collect. That may or may not be different from the way others at your project or your project in general use it. We want to know specifically how you use it. So you should see the poll appear on your screen in just a second, and then you can go ahead and begin completing it. Don't forget to hit submit. And then after completing the poll, if you do have another answer or any context that you want to add to your answer, you're welcome to add that in the chat. We'll give you about 30 seconds to respond to the poll. I see a few more responses coming in, so we'll give you about 5 or 6 more seconds. Go ahead and make sure to get your response in and click submit. Okay, so thank you very much. If you responded, we'll go ahead and close the poll and we'll share the results. We can very, very briefly see that the majority of respondents, 43%, monitor and assess their project. That's the primary way they use the data to collect. Next is 21% support project sustainability, which is another webinar coming up, so stay tuned for that. 12% tell a project story, 9% inform project strategy, 9% don't currently collect data, but that's okay, there's still time. And then 7% are not quite sure what their project does with their data, which is totally okay, because we'll explain how you can work to make that, how you can work to figure that out. So thank you again for those who responded. It's really exciting to see those responses. And as I mentioned earlier, storytelling is such an important benefit about reporting and how they're aligned. So we'll quickly look at some best practices in using project data for storytelling. I'll start by saying that data-driven storytelling is unique from creative tales simply told for entertainment. Your storytelling should have a purpose, because you're trying to describe the impact or energize recruitment efforts, for example, and you can rely on qualitative and quantitative data to meet that purpose. As you complete your project reporting, take time to consider which purpose the data best lends itself. Is it simply informational data? Are you trying to attract volunteers? Are you applying for grants? Allow the data to identify the story. Don't force a narrative on the data. Your project reporting also yields more than figures and values. If your project is rich with qualitative data, which I'm guessing yours probably is, so much data that it's hard to capture, try balancing that with an emotional hook or an angle to really bring your audience in. Continue building in such context by using relevant quotes when possible, like Willie shared the quote about storytelling, especially if you have quotes from project or community members that can really tell the project story. So now that we've identified some important reasons or benefits behind reporting, and I'm sure you probably have others that you'll want to share later, I'm going to turn it over to Willie to help us discuss the reporting items themselves.
To help us walk through the various reporting forms required by AmeriCorps, we'll turn to VISTA sponsor Arturo. He's a new sponsor at one of my allied organizations and is excited for his VISTA project just starting up. Arturo understands how crucial reporting is and is determined to implement and adhere to reporting strategies across the project lifecycle to stay ahead. Arturo shared with me that one of his goals as a sponsor is to better understand each of the 5 required AmeriCorps reports and develop project reporting strategies that are both report specifics and more general. I'm always happy to help my allies because reporting can be crucial to program operations, and I can certainly provide him with some reporting tips, which you'll hear just ahead. One of the reasons Arturo sees as his what's in it for me, or WIIFM, by accomplishing his goal is that he will learn how to proactively work on reporting and not be left in a crunch when a due date is just a few days away. Another reason Arturo has is that project reporting is helpful to more than AmeriCorps. The skill will help Arturo throughout his career, and the reports themselves are strong evidence of Arturo's capable stewardship. So let's accompany Arturo on this journey.
First, Arturo segments his project lifecycle by timeframes. Then he lists out the 5 required reports based on when they are due chronologically. In order of when first due to when last due, the forms are the Sponsor Verification Form, or SVF. You know, we're government, we love acronyms. Federal Financial Report, or FFR, which has an asterisk on the screen that we'll explain shortly. The Project Progress Report, or PPR. Future Plans Form, FPF. And then the VISTA Progress Report Supplement, or VPRS. Arturo thinks about these and really wants to delve a little bit deeper into each report to understand what they're about. You, of course, are encouraged to take notes along the way in the PDF copy of the slides. Because just as important to Arturo as understanding each form's purpose is identifying data collection tips and general recommendations to apply to his project reporting.
Specifically, I will share tips with Arturo and you that will help him develop strategies to collect, review, and report data, identify timeframes or various points for capturing and reviewing data for AmeriCorps reports, and develop processes or templates to collect information from supervisors and members. We want you to absorb these tips, and jotting some notes down as we go along will help.
Arturo started on his goal by mapping the 5 required reports by their due date, as we mentioned, and we are going to go into these in greater detail in just a moment. But right now, we're interested in your perspective and want to learn about it through a fill-in-the-blank chat question. And that is, the report that I'm most interested in receiving recommendations on is blank because blank. So we're looking to learn about which report you are learning more interested in and why. So it's a 2-part chat question. You can feel free to type your response in by just typing the report, then putting a comma, and then explaining why. But we'll give you about a minute to review the list of reports to identify which one you would select to fill in the first blank, and then explain why you're most interested in receiving more recommendations on that report. Feel free to keep those responses coming. I'll give a quick summary. I see a lot of responses coming in. I think I've seen almost every report mentioned, and most of the responses are either because they're a new project, so they want more information about what the report is and why it's due and when it's due. I saw a couple of comments on wanting to learn about a report because it's coming due soon for certain projects and they want to make sure they do it accurately. Then I saw a few responses around a few specific reports like the PPR and the VPRS because they want to make sure they're collecting the correct data and telling their project and all their members what data to collect so that the project director has the right information to report. So these are all great answers, and hopefully we'll get to most, if not all of those during this webinar to help you better plan for each of these reports as we go through. So thank you very much for participating. It really is helpful for Willie and I to learn about the reports that you're most interested in receiving recommendations for, because that's what this webinar is all about. So let's not keep anyone waiting, and we'll continue. Arturo's project lifecycle begins with a 0 to 3 months time frame. The first 3 months of the project are going to encompass at least 2 reports, the sponsor verification form and the federal financial report. First, the SVF tops the list because it is due every 2 weeks perpetually across your project. The FFR, the Federal Financial Report, still has that asterisk next to it, is due either biweekly or monthly across the length of your project, but only in a certain circumstance that we will outline shortly. The first form that Arturo will encounter is the sponsor verification form. Every 2 weeks, sponsors must complete the SVF to affirm each VISTA member's status. The SVF is a document in eGrants that lists the active members assigned to a project and their end of service dates. The sponsor must certify the SVF even if no members left during the pay period covered by the form. This really helps AmeriCorps track which members are still actively serving, which is absolutely necessary because we are accountable to the public for spending living allowance dollars on members that are in service, and we want to know the members' actual service status. This regular reporting is critical for timely and correct payment of living allowances and preventing overpayments due to members who have terminated service early or who have already completed their term of service. This information also ties in directly to VISTA member payroll for standard VISTA projects.
I have several strategies in mind to help plan for and complete the SVF in a timely fashion. SVF data collection strategies include initially reviewing the form in eGrants to ensure an understanding of its layout and completion requirements, and designating staff to submit the form on your behalf if you are unavailable. This function must be completed by a staff member, so you can't delegate it to another AmeriCorps member or an AmeriCorps leader, an intern, or a volunteer. A time frame tip for the sponsor verification form is to set an ongoing reminder, perhaps on your calendar program or your phone. Your reminder doesn't necessarily have to be the day the form is due either. Arturo noted he is going to make his 2 business days in advance, so he has time to follow up with his designee about submitting the SVF if he will be out. This buffer will allow Arturo some flexibility in working with any supervisors who may lag in tracking members' attendance. While this is the first time, it will surely not be the last time that I will recommend Arturo set the deadline for himself or his supervisors and members to be before the deadline required by the Federal Agency of AmeriCorps. My subsite organization staff and AmeriCorps members have a lot going on, and they frequently miss my deadlines. Since I make my deadlines in advance of the federal agency deadlines, I can grant them extensions. Doing so makes me seem like an accommodating and flexible project director, which builds rapport with the staff and members without straining my relationship with my regional office portfolio manager. This connects to the final recommendation about collecting information from supervisors and members. While the SVF doesn't really have or require a template, a good practice for sponsors is to ensure supervisors are regularly tracking their members' time and attendance.
So let's now turn briefly to the FFR. This would be the second report that Arturo would tackle going in order of report due dates. However, Arturo noted that this report has an asterisk. That's because the FFR is only required of VISTA projects that are recipients of VISTA program or support grants. If your project has a cost share agreement, cost share invoices are payable upon receipt, and you'll receive them either on a biweekly or a monthly basis in eGrants, depending on your agreement. Completing these forms is essential to helping us ensure that money awarded remains tied to service, and in helping us get new grant funds into the hands of organizations that really need it, while avoiding piling on to grantees needing more time to spend their awarded funds.
Even if not required for all projects, Arturo would like some project reporting recommendations for the FFR. The first tip gets to understanding just what data needs collecting. Make sure to connect with your AmeriCorps regional office for more information on what is required for your specific grant. A good time frame tip for this report, due biweekly or monthly, is to hold initial calls or meetings with your organization's fiscal staff to discuss needs and roles related to the FFR. The meeting should be held as early into the project as possible to avoid rushing the day it's due. Another good idea for the FFR is to set reminders for its regular submission. For this form, the tip, it is not as much about you collecting information as sharing it by ensuring that staff understand the definitions of each field as outlined in the FFR instructions, which are available on the AmeriCorps.gov site.
So we're now moving forward in the project lifecycle timeframe, and our Arturo identified the next phase is roughly 4 to 6 months. One new report is associated with this period of a project, and that is the Project Progress Report, or PPR. Of course, the sponsor verification form with its biweekly due date is still part of this stage and all subsequent ones. However, Arturo was already feeling comfortable with that form, so now we're going to focus specifically on the PPR. This report, the PPR, is due semi-annually or twice a year, beginning roughly 6 months after the start of the VISTA project, unless told otherwise by your AmeriCorps regional office. So be sure to check with your AmeriCorps regional office in your eGrants account or in the memorandum of agreement for more details on specific due dates on your project year. The robust report compiles accomplishments during a certain reporting period, as well as challenges, support provided to members, and technical assistance needs. The reports should build on one another as you continue them from every 6 months to every 6 months. AmeriCorps staff use this report to assess progress and to determine what feedback, technical assistance, or other interventions are warranted. The PPR is a very important report as it helps sponsors and AmeriCorps staff see whether sponsors are operating the project in accordance with the application, the VISTA policies and regulations, and whether sponsors are making adequate progress towards achieving the results specified in their approved application. These reports are also used at the macro level in agency-wide data calls to quantify the work that we are doing in a particular space. I'll give you an example. Food insecurity is very high in many projects list. Information from the PPR may also be used to fulfill requests for project information from other AmeriCorps departments, such as the Office of Government Relations and the Office of External Affairs. Because the progress report information will be part of your project's official record and will be used to evaluate a project's continuation, each submission should build on the previous one. Please note, VISTA leaders may not access eGrants to work on project management tasks such as progress reports because this is specifically a project staff function. Failure to comply with these provisions by a sponsor or leader can lead to project closure, and of course, we don't want that to happen.
I have several recommendations for the PPR to Arturo and to you all as audience members. Data collection strategies for this important report include recognizing this is an opportunity for collecting both quantitative data like specific performance measures and qualitative information such as stories, anecdotes, explanations on performance measure progress, and description of activities collected by the sponsor from individual members, community members, and project staff. Maintaining supporting documentation, which is a general best practice. For example, if someone says they recruited 300 volunteers last year, they should provide a list. If somebody says they got a grant for $546,000, ask for some kind of grant notification. Some time frame tips for the project's progress report are working with the site supervisors well in advance of the first due date to establish hard deadlines that give you enough time to roll up the results and ask clarifying questions in advance of the report submission deadline. This can further be helped by putting the time frames or deadlines in the memorandum of understanding up front. My subsite supervisors are required to attend virtual meetings with my team every other month, so we can remind them of upcoming important deadlines and tasks, such as PPRs. Next is actively encouraging members to track their accomplishments monthly, so more thorough and accurate accounts are offered and available well before the report's due date. Submitting high quality, compelling reports is a skill, and not many AmeriCorps members have this skill set when they enter their term of service. When I'm coaching AmeriCorps members, I refer to it as code switching. You wouldn't talk to a potential client of your services as you would talk to somebody who's considering funding your work. They are different audiences that require different information. As such, We require they practice writing and reporting like it's a PPR throughout their entire term of service. So when it is PPR time, they're ready to go. In addition to the timing, there are a couple other tips on how to collect information from supervisors and members. One tip is to create a duplicate template with the exact same questions that are in the PPR. The format is up to the sponsor, but the sponsor can give that PPR template to the supervisors, and as supervisors to have members save a copy on their own and fill it out. At the agreed upon time, the sponsor can collect the members' reports, and because they all follow the same format, simply copy and paste the members' responses into the corresponding fields in the eGrants report. The common challenge with this tip is many of the AmeriCorps members and staff do not find the questions posed in the PPR to be intuitive or easily understood. My common workaround is asking questions that are more specific to their project, but formatted in the same section, so I can still easily copy paste their responses in the eGrants. If members do populate their own reports, structure the submission process so that supervisors review and approve them before coming to you. This checkpoint also serves as a validation that the numbers provided are accurate. A good idea is to provide your sites definitions of the items that they will be reporting on, both the performance measures you've selected and the other items in the progress report. For example, including them as an appendix to your data collection template. Another tip for collecting information from supervisors is to confirm that the data they provide for each member is cumulative for the reporting period. So, for example, when tracking volunteers managed, it might not make sense to simply sum the numbers from each month's report if the members managing the same 50 volunteers each month. Finally, feel free to share questions or a member's impact with your AmeriCorps regional office as it happens. That way, our AmeriCorps regional offices can help share your successes and coach you through your challenges as they come. Let's take a short pause from our walk through some of AmeriCorps' reporting forms and practical tips for completing them for a chat question to learn about your experience. Our chat question is, what other data collection tips can you share that really work for or help with your project reporting? This can be a procedure that you put into place or seeking certain types of information about your project, for example. You'll have about a minute to respond in the chat and can reply with a few words or a sentence. Thank you for participating in our chat question. It's great to read these different approaches to project reporting coming in, and we're hopeful they're just as helpful for you to see as they are illuminating for us. I'm reading through them all, and I'm seeing a lot of developing the tools and forms, make sure that everyone has the same form or template. I also saw one about having your VISTA members help define and categorize ways to collect data. That's something we do too here at the Housing Action AmeriCorps Network that we find to work really well. So yeah, keeping a Google Sheet. I think it's another great tip I'm hearing throughout the comments is having like a easily accessible common documentation format so that everybody can kind of work on the same sheet. All great points. Eric, let's turn it back to you to continue.
Thank you so much, Willie. These are great tips. I look forward to exploring them a little bit later. And I appreciate all the responses. It's great to see the wisdom and knowledge already present with us. We are going to return to Arturo's project lifecycle because the third period that he identified is the 7 to 12 months time frame, kind of the second half of the first year of the project. Two reports separate from the SVF are associated with this period. One is the Future Plans Form, or FPF, and the other is the VISTA Progress Report Supplement, or VPRS. The FPF unlocks 90 days prior to a member's end of service, while the VPRS is due for submission every November. So let's first look at the Future Plans Form. This FPF automatically unlocks for members in their my.americorps.gov account 90 days prior to their end of service. Each member will offer critical information in this form, specifically their plans for post-service activities. The form asks if they plan to end their service as scheduled, if they want to extend their service for less than 1 year if they're finishing something critical, if they want to end service early, etc. The member has until the end of their service to complete this, and once they do, the form comes back to you or the direct supervisor because the Future Plans form is made up of 3 parts. The member completes Part A, you or the direct supervisor complete Part B, and then Part C, which we'll talk about in a second, is the AmeriCorps Regional Office. But you want to coordinate with the member supervisor if you don't directly supervise this individual to make sure that you can complete Part B, because in Part B, you and the VISTA project are evaluating the member service. And as you're completing Part B, evaluating the member service, make sure that you're aware that the member will have an opportunity to review your response. Once that part is complete, as I mentioned, the Future Plans form then goes to the AmeriCorps Regional Office for review and completion.
You will build onto the FPF by providing input about the member's performance. Therefore, one data reporting recommendation I'd offer, Arturo, is thoughtfully documenting member activities. These observations will be useful. For example, if a member wants to re-enroll or extend their service, and you would like to document how they've successfully supported your project and accomplished activities on their VISTA assignment description, and rate them accordingly. This reflection will also help the AmeriCorps Regional Office evaluate your VISTA project. A data collection timeframe tip is to set reminders to review and document members' activities. If you provided a project progress report template for dissemination to your members, then this can easily be done by collecting the templates monthly as a way to stay aware as to who is doing what and add in any helpful details. A good technique for collecting information from your member for the FPF is to host an exit interview. Since they will be able to review your comments, you can use the exit interview to inform them of what feedback you'll offer and get more data about how you can help this member transition out of VISTA service and what you may be able to improve for future members. These Future Plans forms are also great documents to use if you are requested to be a reference for a member or alumni too.
The VISTA Progress Report Supplement, or VPRS, is an addendum to the PPR required of sponsors that is typically due late in the calendar year because it's based on our agency's fiscal year, October 1st of one year through September 30th of the next. So it gives a little bit of time to complete the report before it's due in November. Through the VPRS, sponsors submit specific performance data elements used by AmeriCorps. It outlines activities over a single AmeriCorps fiscal year, regardless of the individual VISTA project year. This report also tracks demographic information for your project and is used constantly by VISTA headquarters in marketing materials, in the congressional budget justification sent to Congress, and in reports to federal government task forces driving a response to pressing national crisis, such as with the Office of National Drug Control Policy and the opioid crisis. Occasionally, progress report data are also used to identify exemplar VISTA projects.
To be prepared for the VPRS, Arturo can follow these data collection strategies. Review the questions in advance to understand what your VISTA project will have to answer and what you'll need to track. You may identify a metric or template you would like to employ across the year to track certain points, and which can also be shared with supervisors and members for their tracking purposes. You may come across an item your VISTA project does not address. So when submission time comes, you may respond with a 0 for that question. For example, if your VISTA project does not do opioid programming, you would enter the number 0 for those lines. Do a gut check. Do the numbers you're reporting seem reasonable? AmeriCorps VISTA does an outlier check each year for values that seem overly high based on the number itself or the value per member. Your portfolio manager may reach out to confirm the accuracy of numbers that meet this high values criteria. Tips for capturing data in a timely fashion echo some of what we've heard before. It's best to make the associated tasks and deadlines clear to the site supervisors from the beginning. And you will likely have to track information with your members monthly to accurately submit this report. To make the best use of information collected from supervisors and members, ensure the site's results reflect the VPRS time period, the federal fiscal year. Also, check that the counts are not duplicated. That means that volunteers managed by a single member should not be counted just once for each year. And if multiple members contribute to serving the same beneficiaries or organization, the beneficiaries or organization should just be counted once.
The 5 reports that Arturo initially listed have now been mapped by their due date across the project lifecycle. However, Arturo wisely scheduled the 4th segment of his project lifecycle to encompass 13 months and beyond. Because the first year of a project has concluded does not mean your data collection and reporting does. That's an ongoing process because after 1 year of your project, tracking data and information is continually required for reports to anticipate and adhere to due dates that range from biweekly to annually. Perhaps consider building in some time to reflect on your reporting processes in addition to several of the tips that Willie mentioned. You may find that this is a useful time to offer reminders, for example, to any staff at your VISTA project about being the person to submit the sponsor verification form if you are out, or reminders to supervisors about deadlines for the project progress report so they can collect information from their members. As you reflect on your processes, note successes and areas for improvement to update reporting strategies as needed. Maybe you decide that you want one primary template for documenting members' monthly accomplishments. You decide what works best for you. So we're going to wrap up this section by pivoting from form-specific project reporting recommendations to 3 general tips that we encourage you to keep in mind.
Arturo is well into his goal of understanding more about AmeriCorps' required reports, knowing where they fit into project's life cycle, what they are, and what he can do to prepare for each. I'd like to leave him with 3 important tips that are general to project reporting rather than a specific report. First, it's best practice for you to establish your data collection processes for both qualitative and quantitative data well in advance of the due dates. For example, consider processes that allow for accounting your project's challenges, your project's accomplishments, the number of members and volunteers serving at your project, and the dollar amount of in-kind donations received. Your consideration of data collection processes could also include a communication strategy you follow with supervisors and members that outlines the importance of tracking data early and benefits to their professional future for doing so, such as building up their resume. Next, identify the system and tools you'll use to collect data. As with all aspects of the VISTA project lifecycle, the data collection systems and tools will vary depending on the type of service provided by the project, the size of the project, and the roles of project staff. Lastly, if you are an intermediary or sub-site project, think about how often you want the sites to report to the intermediary and how often you want the intermediary to have to review information. Have that conversation with your sites and work together.
I appreciate those details, Willie. Those are great tips and points to bring us to our summary. So just as we saw Arturo do, take the time to get familiar with each reporting item, its purpose, what sort of data it collects, and its due date. Make sure to plan ahead in organizing your project's reporting approach and data to avoid rushing at the 11th hour. And in planning and executing your project reporting efficiently, you are helping to provide crucial data to AmeriCorps that helps account for money received or progress made. Beyond project reporting's organizational impact, it is something that benefits you professionally as it leaves you with a lasting skill and can act as a portfolio in your future. So we're going to check in with you now and see how well you followed along with today's conversation. The question is, which reporting tip aligns specifically with the Project Progress Report, or PPR? We'll give you about 90 seconds to think about this before you respond via the poll that shows up on your screen. And again, the question is, which reporting tip aligns with the Project Progress Report? So I see a few more responses coming in. If you haven't submitted a response, we'll give you just a little bit more time to do it. Thank you. We're getting close to the end of the presentation and we'll get to your questions in just a moment, but I do want to give a few more seconds for any final responses that are coming into our poll question about which form-specific reporting tip aligns with the project progress report, the PPR, based on the information we covered today. Just looking for any response. Hopefully you can access the poll. If you don't have access to the poll, you can type it in the chat, but we'll give you about 10 more seconds to get any final responses in. And again, thank you very much for your participation and for your engagement. See a few people wrapping things up now. 5 more seconds, and then we'll continue with the last part of our presentation. Okay, thank you very much. We will close the poll and we will go to show you the final answer. So the question is, which form-specific reporting tip correlates to the PPR? The answer is B. Create a duplicate template to capture qualitative and quantitative data. Great job if you got that correct. This is a wonderful thing. So the last couple things I want to mention is a lot of the reporting items and tips we covered today are specific to AmeriCorps VISTA, but the topic of data collection and reporting is vast. So to help you with more general foundation, we strongly encourage you to copy and paste the link that you see in the chat and view it after this webinar. It's a resource by LinkedIn titled, How Do You Use Data to Make Project Decisions? This resource does include information on data-driven project management and perspectives from the field. So we encourage you to check that out. As always, visit the VISTA campus. I'll give a little bit of a plug around a special feature of the VISTA campus in a few minutes, but we do encourage you to check out this to access different resources and draw your attention to a useful tool for communicating with other sponsors and supervisors. And that action step is today after the webinar, just log into the campus, click on VISTA Connect, and then post something to the community. You can say hi, you can say where you're from, but also I encourage you specifically on the topic of reporting. There were so many questions about templates and ideas and what do we do about this. This is a great place to post your questions for other sponsors and project directors so you can share resources and comment on ideas with each other. So thank you for doing that. Before we get to your questions, one final slide. We do encourage you and recommend that you complete our very quick end of session evaluation. We greatly appreciate your feedback, all things you want to say about the webinar. So thank you in advance for completing this. It only takes 3 to 4 minutes, but your feedback really helps us inform other webinars and strategize around how to improve sessions like this in the future. So again, thank you in advance for your feedback, either now or soon after this session. I did see a couple questions come in, so I want to get to as many as we can in the 5 minutes we have remaining. Willie, the first question I'll briefly answer and then I'll turn it to you. The question was, do you have any templates for the PPR and VPRS report that you could share with us? From the AmeriCorps standpoint, I'll briefly say we don't have or provide a specific template because we know that different projects do things differently. Some projects create a Word document and have all their members and supervisors fill in information that way, and they email it and share it that way. That works for some projects. Other projects may use an online system like Google Forms or Microsoft Forms where people can input specific data and they collect it in a spreadsheet and can compile it that way. We know that there's not a one-size-fits-all model for every project, so we try to leave it up to each project to determine that. But I did see in the chat a lot of people commenting to say that they have their own template, they're willing to share it. Willie, from your perspective as an intermediary and all of the work you've done, do you have and do you use any kind of template for these reports?
Yeah, so I do have a template. We just recently invested in a new management system called Impact Suite from America Learns. We find it affordable and worth the investment of our precious unrestricted funds. And I encourage you all to check them out. America Learns Impact Suite, they're really great. If you're like most organizations that I've worked with and have worked at in the past and presently, and you don't have that kind of money lying around to invest in a new management system, we have run with Google Sheets for every year up until this. We just started using that America Learns system. I've used a Google Drive system during my rest of my career so far, and it has done the job. You know, I think about when it comes to templates like this, I also think about the Bob Dylan line. You can please some of the people all of the time, and you can please all the people some of the time, but you cannot please all the people all of the time. So whatever system you use, people are going to have some feedback on it. And so that's okay. I'm also just trying to buy some time. I'm trying to find a blank template to share with everybody, but I'm having a hard time. So Eric, would it be possible for me to like provide a blank Google Drive template that we could share in the follow-up? Or perhaps like if anybody who definitely wants to see the system I use, I could like, if you share your email with me now, I can write it down and send it to you as a follow-up.
Definitely. We will be collecting information and sharing information after this webinar as early as tomorrow, or I should say later this week. But yes, that is absolutely possible. And I do encourage you, as you just saw in the chat, for any others who have resources they want to share, in addition to what we share with you, I encourage you to log into the VISTA campus, click on VISTA Connect, and navigate to Resource Exchange. It's a relatively new resource that allows you to upload resources and share resources such as reporting templates so that others can see and use them, and they're all in one place. One other question I want to get to before we finish is, can you tell us where due dates are? Can you tell us where the due dates are located for the reports in eGrants? Willie, I'm not sure if you have a comment on that. I know from my perspective, I'm not in eGrants like most sponsors are. So my advice would be to check with your AmeriCorps Regional Office Portfolio Manager. But Willie, I'm not sure if you have an idea of where specifically in eGrants the due dates are.
Eric, I'm embarrassed to admit I have eGrants basically memorized.
I love that.
So we'll you know, I can make I'll send a Loom about it to people, which is another great tool. If you're not using Loom, you should highly consider it. You basically get to record yourself speaking, and you can record your screen and show somebody how to do something, and then it like records the video and you can send it as a link. I personally am trying to write as few emails for the rest of my life as possible. And Looms are very helpful. So project progress report, I guess I'll start. The simple version is no, there's not a singular location on eGrants where all of these dates are listed out. There are different buttons you have to click for different ones, and I can write that down on my list of things I'll do to follow up with this, is create Looms for finding deadlines.
I'm sure that's appreciated. I see a lot of comments in the chat from people who are very appreciative of anything you have to share, Willie, that you're able to, as well as anything other project sponsors on this webinar are able to share. And certainly if there are other questions that came in afterwards, I will do my best to respond to them via email. I do want to quickly turn to mention our next upcoming webinar, which is next month, October 17th, Tuesday, October 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern. The title is Project Sustainability. Very important topic for you to continue to work at your project. So we'll go into more detail, but please, 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 when the registration is available, I encourage you to attend, because sustainability of the work that you're doing, the great work that you're doing, is so important. And last but not least, thank you so much to our co-presenter, Willie Heineke, for all the work he does at Housing Action Illinois, and especially providing information on this webinar. Thank you to the webinar design team on my end. Thank you to webinar support team. And thank you, of course, to you for the great work that you do for each and every VISTA project, each and every VISTA member. Have a great day, and we'll see you next month.